So I'm Tina. I've been at some of these before. This is my friend Mark, and we occasionally have worked with some museums to do small interactive displays and similar projects. And one of them recently asked us to provide a MediaWiki. No, they didn't say MediaWiki. They just wanted to have a kiosk for displaying their information. So what we will cover today is what we were trying to build, what hardware we used, what software we used, and how we set it up. It's a little bit more of a how-to than the other stuff we've heard already. How we turned it into an offline kiosk as opposed to mostly these are on the internet. How we populated it, how we hardened it for use, backup and maintenance scripts, some performance testing. And it is not meant to be a here, just take this, follow it step by step. This is just sort of some of the general steps. Yeah, as I said, they asked us for a kiosk, and the thing that actually motivated them to move now was that they had been given a series of photographs with some metadata, and they wanted to be able to show them in their actual museum rather than in the online setting where they were available. There were a few more than 100 images. They do not have Wi-Fi or any other collection where they are. They also wanted to be able to start showing some stories. Because one of the things that they do is they get emails from people saying, hey, do you have any information about my grandpa's grocery store that was at the corner? And because they have a bunch of historical information on paper for the area, they would be able to look at voters list, council meeting minutes, etc., and put this together. But rather than just sending back an email, they wanted to be able to start saying, yeah, we're going to put this on this wiki as well, or on this kiosk as well. We wanted to be able to show audio and video just in case they will add that later. They need to be able to update and edit stuff themselves. I did not want to be one of those contractors who build something that cannot be locally maintained. Must be inconspicuous because the rest of the place is all full of old artifacts, so we didn't really want to put a bright, shiny aluminum box in there. Need little to no maintenance. And one of the things with these museums is often they get grant funding rather than operational funding. So we wanted to be able to give them something where once it's up and running, they don't have to pay either us or someone else every 5 minutes to do changes to this thing. And they wanted it to be relatively secure. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to...
So basically, everybody's heard of the Raspberry Pi. We built it around one of those, Raspberry Pi 4. We'll be a gig model because there have been horror stories in the past about Raspberry Pis being slow for this kind of thing, so we thought we'd go with the top spec that was available at the time. Instead of using the SD card, we went with external USB to SATA bridge with a 500 gig solid state drive hanging off it. Since there would be no network connection, and since people like knowing when they are editing and being able to look back through the records, we had to add a real-time clock to it. These modules are very inexpensive. They're available everywhere. Went the safe route and stuck with the official power supply. Just used this is the display that we used in this case, but anything up to, I don't remember the resolution, they're fine. With a passive cooling aluminum block case and no fans, and then you saw our beautiful 3D printed and laser wood cut piece of the front. And then just some extraneous things to connect things to the front. The operating system and the software, we tried to make it as simple as possible so that if we aren't around or if something happens and we do get called back 5 years from now, we can take a look at it and it's as close to stock as possible. So just a plain Jane Raspberry Pi OS. And then you can see the stack here for MediaWiki, and we ran 1.39.5. We know that's not the newest version, but there was a reason for that. And then we stuck with newer versions of the Raspberry Pi OS, give you the option of running X or running Wayland. We stuck with X because it gave us more flexibility for screensavers and other customizations. So again, not an exhaustive list, but disable the Wi-Fi, disable the Bluetooth, and with those aluminum cases on it, usually the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth don't work anyway. But yeah, they want sound for some of the videos, so send the audio out through the HDMI port so it's picked up on your monitor. Set the Firefox to be the default browser because we're using kiosk mode in Firefox, and have it automatically log in as the user so that if the power gets bumped or something happens, there's no interaction required by the staff. It just logs in automatically. And this was kind of a key thing here. With the Raspberry Pi setup, you have the option of having it log you in automatically. We want it to log in automatically, but we don't want the person logging in automatically to be the administrator of the system. So we create a second account, and then you remove all the groups, all the admin groups, take them out of sudo so that the original account can't do any of that anymore. But before you do that, you make sure you create a second account with those groups and with those rights. Do that first. Again, we wanted, since we were locking down the kiosk, we wanted to leave it as simple as possible. We wanted to set it up so that people could come in off the street, sit down, and do searches for stuff at the stuff through the wiki. But that limits what the staff there can do as far as editing, because we've locked down function keys, we've locked down Control, Alt, single tab, because it's kiosk mode. You can't break out of Firefox. So our solution to that was to expose the Ethernet port and allow them to hook up an external laptop so they could come in and browse to the kiosk over the network there and do the editing like that. That's great, but then you need a DNS and DHCP server, or you have to convince a bunch of volunteer retirees who may look at doing this once or twice a year to set a static IP on their laptop, right? Yeah, so disabling Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, making sure that the only functions and the only permissions that the logging in user has are the ones that they absolutely need to use Firefox and to browse and have permissions to read the files. And here, Xmod map, I'm not sure how many people here are Linux people or Unix people or anything yet. This is a tool that you use. There's a laser pointer. I don't need to use my fingers, but that's a tool that you can use to remap keys. So again, somebody goes and tries to Alt F4 and close the window. You Alt, you F4, and you just send them to nothing. So they can't do it. The problem with this, well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but PCMan FM, Alex panel, so that if something does happen to Firefox, does crash out, all they're left with is a blue screen blank. There's nothing for them to click. There's nothing for them to open or run. And yes, the bottom point here is very important. We configured this with the strict condition that it's offline. If you're connecting anything to the internet or any other public network, you need to do a lot more configuration than this. So.
Yeah, so one of the things that we had thought about was trying to, what do we do to make it so that museum visitors can't edit it, but museum staff or any volunteers can edit it as necessary. So we were initially thinking about going with something more complicated, like having a switch somewhere where you can use the GPIO on your Raspberry Pi to make it now editable. We ended up going with the plugin largely because we wanted to keep it as simple as possible, not add anything else for this additional hardware if somebody else wanted to build this thing. We also were initially thinking about making it so that once you log in, you are able to edit locally. But again, it just leaves, yeah. Again, for simplicity, we decided to just keep it so that they can plug in and edit via the Ethernet port. We thought it was going to be simple, but we figured out that a lot of people on their home laptops, these again are mostly retired people who volunteer there, have never used the Ethernet port on their laptop. So one of the things we fell into was actually somebody plugged in on both sides and the Ethernet port wasn't working as it should be, which they would have not known in the 2 years of owning that computer. So yeah, we tried to keep it simple, but it didn't necessarily make it any more simple. We were not sure initially if making something where you can just plug in your Ethernet cable to make it accessible was actually a good idea from a security perspective. And then we thought, well, this is a tiny place. You can see the whole thing. Unlikely that somebody has an Ethernet cable in their pocket or has the motivation to come there with it. So we decided that that was probably safe enough. And also, even if they do plug in, they still have fairly limited access to it without having accounts on there. Also, as Mark had already said, thought about requiring a starting IP address, but don't really want to make this harder on those volunteers if necessary. And like in a bunch of other setups, we decided to set it up to run cron tab with run jobs.php with a cron tab, because the traffic that this thing would get would be kind of unpredictable and light. So if they, because of the way we set up some data structures around it, if they edit one template, it could take them weeks to actually graze down that PHP, that jobs queue. So that's why we set it up that way. So for the wiki content, not going to go into too much details, but we made templates to have collections of the images and to be able to annotate the image descriptions with templates. And then we add the templates that would allow them to list collections. The whole idea being that adding one more collection is just building one more page, and then it pulls in that page into the dropdown for the collections for page forms, so that they can extend this thing as they want to. We ended up using Python scripts to scrape the repository where the images were. This was something that they had the rights to do, to work with these images and to store them. They just were stored in a sort of inaccessible format. And then we had another Python script to upload and provide the template data for the images. Now I tried to use MediaWiki, and I kind of had no luck with it, so I ended up using the Selenium library and did it through Windows interface automation. We started this thing by putting this on I have a shared hosting site where I have a bunch of wikis, so we just put up one more wiki on there so that we were able to collaborate with them and use a wiki how it's supposed to be used, collaborative editing, for doing the initial setup. And then when we were kind of happy with what we had, we added the images there, then we set it to read-only, dumped it all, and restored it to the Pi. We had some work around with that, but it worked out for us. And so I changed, one of the things that we needed to do is we needed to change this. I was looking at this up here, but okay. We had to change the MediaWiki comment. How did we go back with this? Comments in order to hide some of the stuff that they did not want to have visible, such as the talk pages. I mean, there's no relevance to the talk pages in this kind of setting. So that's the second part there. The first part was they did not want us to show main page. They wanted us to show the name of their organization. So we had to work around some of the showing the organization name as instead of the main page with a redirect, but then we did not want to show the little redirected from link on there, so we could change that out. Removed tabs for talk and protecting things, like a lot of the tool tabs essentially. We changed some of the toolbox stuff because some of the toolbox contents won't make sense in a standalone setting. We made the links bold. I don't know what happened. At some point, people decided it isn't pretty when you have links that are visible as links. But in this case, we wanted to make it, well, I think the way that MediaWiki these days shows links, it's so subtle that I often cannot see that from black versus, especially once they've turned purple, I almost can't see links. So we made those bold. And we hide it, we had to hide the history in the image description pages because there were some ways that you can click on the image to show it as the big image only. And because we had locked out the user interface for Firefox and the keys to get back out of that mode, those were dead ends. So one of the things that we realized that we were running into with kiosk mode and with trying to secure and harden this thing a little bit is that there are definitely portions of the way that you can travel in MediaWiki which leave you at dead ends unless you have a back button or another way to get out of it. So those were some of the changes we made there. We got rid of the help page, the help link in the toolbox because again it's an offline wiki and if you click it you're going to just go to a dead page. And what I've kind of wondered about since is like we ended up having to do a bit of this stuff to make it work as an offline wiki or make it work as a wiki where you want to make it as a kiosk. So it's almost something where I wish this was available just as prepackaged thing like an extension or a setting where I can say, get rid of every link that goes to the internet from this particular MediaWiki, because not from pages. I mean, that's by design, whoever uses it. But if it was the tool itself, at least I could tell it, this will be offline. None of these links work. You guys must see this all the time. So that would be kind of nice. Yeah, and then we had some fun with the footer icon. So the obvious one is the powered by MediaWiki, and that's fairly well documented. You go into local settings, you add one line, and you get rid of it. But we used Debian, so I'm gonna add this to Mark because we had some fun with that.
So everybody knows the powered by MediaWiki icon. Anybody knows the powered by Debian icon? I see one hand. I see a bunch of shaking heads. Yeah. There's a story behind that. But we'll get to that tomorrow.
but as just sort of a quick thing, when you run it as an apt-get, which is one way to install stuff on a Debian server, you end up getting a powered by Debian icon in the bottom corner.
Yes. From the bottom.
And it's not so intuitive to get rid of that one.
So backups, pretty simple. We wanted to set it up so that if they sit down and spend an hour or an afternoon editing, that they can just go, come in the next day basically, and browse to the kiosk itself and download a file that is a backup. So because this machine is sitting by itself, there's no tapes, there's no network, nothing. So yeah, we just clear out yesterday's backup and come to the database, copy local settings, grab everything in the images folder, and then tar it all up, and then throw it in a location that is browsable at the kiosk/backups link. And then it just shows up there's a single file, they download it, and or if we're swinging by to take a look, we download it, and you can bring it home. So
yeah, well, so we set up some maintenance cron jobs. One of them being the run jobs of PHP that I already mentioned, because we don't know how much edit traffic it's going to get. We ran that as a cron job. And then there are some other things where I have found stuff does not update very well. And maybe some of these things have actually improved over the years. Like I have this weird collection of maintenance things that I run in my cron jobs because at some point MediaWiki 1.25 did not do something properly, and I've never gone back through and said, oh, I wonder if it does this properly now. So I just, whenever I set up a wiki these days, I seem to also run a bunch of maintenance things overnight in a scheduled way. So that's the clean up empty categories, update special pages, and rebuild all. And we will have to change how that file works once we go to 4.0, or if we go to 1.40 on a different kiosk, because they now require this run.php thing instead. And then we had the extension specific stuff where I've just had some difficulty with cargo data not updating as I would expect, and maybe this is actually fixed. Maybe this would no longer be a problem now, but I run these three every night as well. That's just one of the ways to keep them going nicely. Yeah, so when some of the pitfalls along the way were that we had some consequences out of limiting the keys. I've already mentioned some of the stuff about if you get to the point where you view the image file itself rather than just the image file description page, then you cannot get back. So we had to make that unavailable.
I will say that was particularly embarrassing because we were very proud. We delivered this and said, good luck, have fun. And like 2 hours later, we had a phone call saying, I'm stuck.
Yeah, reboot. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so then there were other things where, because of the way we had it set up, we were running into some errors. The wiki was appropriately throwing an error, but because of the inability to go back, we were now at a dead end. So they would just, nice thing about a Pi is you turn it off, you turn it back on, and the way we set it up, it boots, but that's not really a nice way to back out of an error. Well, yeah, when we moved the images folder from the online wiki to the kiosk, didn't have the right permissions.
The bottom two are things that I messed up.
Yeah,
Really.
They were more just general setup things where we fell into
Yeah.
some traps.
It is surprising how much latency you can put into page loads if your DNS is not working. So we did a little bit of performance testing. Don't like doing it on the equipment that we're giving to people. So like we set up a second Pi with the same, pretty much the same specs. So yeah, Raspberry Pi 4B version 1.5, I believe, with 8 gig of RAM and 139.5 and 139.7. We know that there are newer versions out there, but these are LTS. And we tried out 4 different storage options and created a test wiki with 100 pages, with each page had the first chapter of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and 100 images with 1 thumbnail per page. As you can see on a Pi 4B with 8 gig of RAM, there is a lot of extra horsepower available. This is not taxing the machine. When they're loading pages, when they're watching videos, it's fine.
I actually was amazed. Like I was playing with this thing. It's like I've only ever used wikis online, and this was like you hit save and it's there. You hit load and it's there. Like there's just no delay in it. It was really nice to use.
Yeah, and you could probably, if it's a small, like smaller than what we have, you could probably get by with 2 gig ports. Might run into some problems with buffers and cache, but the 4 gig port for most installations should be just fine. And the Pi 5s are out now, and they're faster. Yes, so if things are slow, we ran into this DNS. Just don't, yeah. Disk access can be a problem. Link speed and duplex, what Tina was talking about earlier with plugging in an Ethernet cable, there was a link speed and duplex mismatch between the client laptop and the kiosk, and half pages were loading because it was trying to renegotiate all the time. You want to check and see if you have enough power, a little lightning bolt icon up in the top right. I want to see what the RAM's doing, and then the logs are your friends for this. It's very, stuff stands out. This is also after the DNS and host file stuff. This is probably one of the easiest ways to kill performance or anything if you're using an external USB drive. There are different chipsets. Again, here, you never know exactly which ones you're going to get. You can buy the same part number from the same manufacturer and get different chipsets in the same batch. So the bottom point here, don't trust if it works in Windows on your desktop PC that it's going to work in Linux or on a Raspberry Pi or on any other SPC. Some hints that the USB side of bridge isn't working well. Basically, if it sucks, check the logs. That's kind of where things go. There are something called quirks, USB quirks, for the SATA bridges. You can try doing that. You can try plugging in the USB 2 port if you're stuck with a particular chipset. That may help. If you see this is a good example. If you see this in the logs, red, bad. Extra red, even more bad. If you see this when you're trying to run any kind of command, usually indicative of a problem. So, yes, check the logs. So we did testing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different setups. Sorry, combination of these elements within however many setups. We had an SD card, which is what the standard is, and then we had a 870 Samsung 500D, lower cost Kingston A400 240, and the JMS 578, and the AMS 10, 13, 50, 10, something. So set this up to do fetch from the Pi to the Pi. So it's on the kiosk machine. How fast can it fetch pages using one one thread basically, one set of commands. So you can see here that actually the less expensive solid state with the ASM can pull two pages per second, whereas the 870 with the JMS chipset can do about half that. So still, 2 pages per second is faster than most people I know can read. But if you hammer it, this is where things start to change a bit. The better hard drive with the better chipset, the more supported chipset, can handle a lot more requests per second than the SD card can. This is also just to clarify, again, the only thing that was changed here was MariaDB max connections was increased to a ridiculous amount, so that it didn't end up, basically we wanted the hardware to be the limiting factor here, not MariaDB saying too many connections. And then from the user's perspective, this, I had fun doing this one. I set up a camera, some screen capture, and a stopwatch, and just created pages and timed how long it took to create the pages. So from the user's perspective, you can see that it takes about half the time with the solid state with the USB 3 ASM chipset than it takes to do it with the SD card. And the one on the farthest right there is the shared hosting that Tino's talking about. It's not too bad, but it also varies widely based on how the internet is at any particular point in time. And that is pretty much that. So if anybody has any questions, or we're here all week.
Did you use a touchscreen display?
No,
Okay.
but we just got one. Yeah, that's, yes. Touchscreen works. The particular, what's the brand that was it? Beatronics. So they're meant for POS terminals and stuff like that. And they seem to be nicely supported. Everything works right out of the box.
One of the things we found on a different project with the museum stuff is that it was really important to get an IPS one, just because depending on the orientation and how people are able to look at it, it really didn't work without that. So these guys are all IPS, and
yeah,
they work nicely.
It's quite easy to see. I can't remember who was next. All right.
Rich text. When the retirees plug in their thing, are they just editing plain text descriptions? Are they using Visual Editor or something? How did you teach them wiki text? I'm just curious.
Oh, that is a really good question. So no, we did put forms in front of it, hoping that all they would have to do is have plain text inside of forms. So far, they have not added too many stories, and if they did want to add stories, they would have to know such things as how to add headings and whatever if they chose to do that. We had initially installed a Visual Editor, and that ended up being sort of all together a different nightmare. It seems like once you start to do templates and Visual Editor and maybe a little bit of form stuff, they all kind of don't play too nicely. So we turned. There's a whole thing tomorrow about the how we decided to use Visual Editor and how we decided to turn it back off.
I was gonna ask, first, this is very interesting. Did I hear correctly, when you're trying to do maintenance on it, the only way you can connect is with the Ethernet cable?
That's correct.
That was more by us deciding that.
Okay, because this is a new computer from this year. I don't have an Ethernet.
Yep.
Right?
That's a very good point. And like there are USB Ethernet adapters, and
Okay.
but
I was just wondering what prompted the choice of Ethernet.
Yes.
we didn't want to set the Pi up as an access point because it is in a network desert. It would be the only thing there, and people are gonna see it. People are gonna try to connect to it. That was the big concern there.
It's also an easy way to make it secure by just being not having a cable there, right? Like, I mean, that's a pretty big obstacle for people to try to connect to it.
Not to mention, you said that the heat sink would
disrupt the
Yes.
network.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Early user feedback, what are the thoughts so far?
Well, after we solved I have to unplug it every time I go and look at an image. It's been quite positive. We've had other museums expressing interest in it now. So we're kind of hoping to mock up a demo with the touchscreen shortly. So
Yeah.
This is a minor point, but you can change the wiki's main page to be something, the name to be something other than main page without a CSS tab.
I believe it was by doing a redirect, right?
No, you just edit, I believe just edit the page called MediaWiki main page.
To be a redirect.
No, well, yeah, to whatever you want them to.
But if you edit it to be a redirect, then you end up.
But it's not.
No, it's in the
Well,
MediaWiki
right.
namespace.
The name of the main page is a message, which is what's.
Oh, the MediaWiki main page.
Yes.
Ah, okay, there. That makes a lot of sense.
last 3 slides, we don't have to do extra.
Do you make pictures?
Not good ones.
Well, the thing is, ideally, the little box should be invisible, right? Like
Not of the font, some of them are,
Oh, what it looks like. Of the whole little museum?
yeah.
Yeah, we could have.
Yeah.
But the whole point was for it to be conspicuous. So I mean, well, how inconspicuous are going to make the monitor? They had their monitor bought already, and had their mindset on that monitor and keyboard, so it wasn't very.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.